I'm Julie Steele, and today we're going to test the pH level of our garden soil. This is our newly constructed garden plot with brought in soil. So we need to test it to see if it has the right pH for the kind of vegetables we want to grow. So now we need to know if we've got the right kind of soil for the stuff we want to grow. We want to grow tomatoes and cucumbers and squash and some zucchini and maybe some potatoes. And then later on in the fall and the winter, we'd like to grow some leafy green vegetables, turnips and lettuce and onions and things like that. Most gardens in the South have an optimal pH level of the soil between a 6 and a 7. So we want to know what do we have and whether or not we need to add any nutrients, any fertilizer, any lime or sulfur or anything like that to make the pH of our garden be what we want it to be for the kinds of vegetables we want to grow.
So how are we going to determine the pH? What is your methodology?
We've got 2 different tests that we're going to do. One you can do with household items that you have sitting around at home, and the other one is a little more scientific, give you a little more accurate reading of your pH level, called a cabbage test, cabbage water test.
Interesting. Why wouldn't we want to just call the local 4-H club or the local Georgia, what do you call that place?
The extension office?
The extension office, of course.
Because we're stuck at home from COVID-19, and so we're social distancing, so we're on our own, honey.
So that would take a few days too, right, to get that back, even if we could go visit
Even
them.
if they could come over, yes, it would take a little while to get those
All right,
back.
so you're telling me you're going to use cabbage and you're going to use vinegar to determine the pH level of this soil, this new dirt that we had brought in.
I am.
All right, let's get it done. So let's show us what you got.
Come take a picture of the list of materials that we'll need to perform the test. You need beakers or glass jars or clear cups, or like I've got, some empty plastic water bottles. You got empty plastic water bottles. I have something to stir with, some distilled water, some cabbage water that I made earlier today, some distilled white vinegar, some baking soda, and a measuring cup, a half cup, and then a whole cup that I made out of a soup can. My good measuring spoons from the kitchen to use in soil. So I took a water bottle. I measured upside down with the cap on what a half a cup is. Then I also took the cap off and measured, and guess what? That's 1 teaspoon. So here's my teaspoon measure, here's my half cup measure, and here's my homemade beaker. I also went out to the garden and got a sample of soil. We need 2 beakers, so I'm going to cut this other water bottle. And because they're the same kind of water bottle, I'll know where my measures are because it should be at the same line for both bottles. So now I have 2 beakers that I can use, 2 half cups, and 2 teaspoons.
So let's get back to this cabbage water business right here. What is that? That's just, how did you create this cabbage water? Where did it come from?
The cabbage water, I took a red cabbage, or sometimes you'll hear people call them a purple cabbage, and I cut up about 6 leaves of cabbage. I boiled it in 2 cups of distilled water for about 10 minutes. And then I set it aside with the cabbage leaves in it for about 30 minutes, and I drained off the water, and that's what we have here. For the cabbage water test, the first thing we're going to do is take one of our beakers, we're going to take our teaspoon measure, we're going to put 2 teaspoons of our garden soil sample in our beaker. 1. After that, we'll add a few inches of our cabbage water to the soil.
How long does this cabbage test take?
After you've added the water, we're going to let this sit for about 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll stir up our cabbage water and our little bit of dirt, and we're going to set this beaker aside. We're going to have it sit for 20 to 30 minutes, and then what we'll do is compare the color of the water to a scale with different colors on it, and it'll tell us what the acidity or alkalinity of our solution is. For our test number 2, the baking soda and vinegar test, we'll start the same way. We'll take one of our beakers, we'll take our teaspoon measure and put 2 teaspoons of our soil sample in the bottom. This test is a quick test. You know immediately if you've done it or not. So I'm going to take, remember my measure cup, this up to the first line is a 1/2 cup. I'm going to take my white vinegar. Okay, and now we're going to come right over our beaker, because if it starts to fizz, we'll know that we've got let all those bubbles go down for just a second. Now that the air bubbles are gone, you can look over on the top and see that it's really not fizzing. It's not fizzing the way that you would see peroxide fizz, or the way that you would see vinegar fizz with other things. And so that tells me that because the vinegar solution did not fizz, that we don't have an alkaline soil. So it's not from a 7 to an 8. It's not alkaline. So now we're going to see, well, is it acidic or is it neutral? And since our vinegar solution did not fizz, and we want to test this soil a different way now to see if it's acidic or if it's neutral, we'll go through the same procedure again, the way we've begun all of our other tests, with 2 teaspoons of our soil sample into a new or different beaker. And this time we're going to take distilled water, not just purified water, not tap water, but distilled water, because tap water, you'll be able to test it on your own and see that it actually has its own pH level. So we get enough distilled water in here, in our beaker, just to make a muddy water solution. Muddy water solution complete. And now what we'll add is our magic 1/2 cup measure. We'll add a 1/2 cup of our baking soda. To our muddy water solution. And now once you've added it and you give it a little stir, if the baking soda was going to react and start to fizz, it would fizz immediately. It's not fizzing at all. So what this tells me then is that we do not have an acidic solution. We have a neutral pH, which is right in the middle of the pH scale, which is optimal for the kinds of vegetables that we want to grow. So it's been 30 minutes and we're back to look at our cabbage water, which is still essentially the same color it was when we started, which means that we have a neutral pH. So that confirms our other 2 tests, and I wanted to just double check to make sure that I had cabbage water right. So I have my purple cabbage water, and I'm going to test a lime.
This is a perfectly good waste of lime here, but we're going to do it anyway.
You can see it almost immediately getting pinker.
I guess we're using limes because we're not drinking Coronas anymore.
Correct. Now again, we want to give it just a few minutes, but you can already see that it's turning pink, and it'll continue to turn red and then pink, because citrus fruit obviously is very acidic in our colors.
Got your hand on it.
So the outcome of our experiments were that our garden soil has a neutral pH, which is optimal for the kinds of vegetables that we want to grow. We did it with 2 different tests. One was the quick test with the baking soda and the vinegar, and the other was with the cabbage water test. So there are 2 different methods that you can use to determine the pH level of your garden soil without having to wait for the extension office to come out and test your soil for you. Thank you for watching.